All right, so we are back. JD, how are you today?
All is well. All is well. What's going on?
Oh man, it's Friday here. We're recording on a Friday. You have big weekend plans?
Nah. This is a rare light weekend for me, so I'm gonna take advantage of it and chill, man.
I like it. Well, guess what? We're having another fantastic episode today. We have Adam Steinberg here from Kana. I'm really interested today in hearing about Kana. Kana is like making waves.
We're trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Adam, tell our audience a little bit about what Kana is to get us started.
Sure. Why don't I tell you kind of how it started, where we came, and we've definitely evolved over the past 4 years. I can kind of give you the story where we started and where we've come. That'll probably give you the best context if that works.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So we launched in February 2015. So I met Mikey, our CEO. I'm like one of our other co-founders, like September 2014. He told me about this idea he had. He had gone up to Humboldt, Mendocino, it's like Emerald Triangle. I think you guys pretty much know probably Emerald Triangle more.
So tell our audience what that means, because that is, I mean, around here we all know what that means.
Cool. So Emerald Triangle is Mendocino County, Humboldt County, and Trinity County. Northern California is about the size of Ireland, roughly, and they've said historically there's like roughly 40 to 50,000 cannabis farmers up there that have been historically supplying roughly 80% of the cannabis in the entire nation. Historically, is what they say.
Have you seen this Netflix documentary?
Murder Mountain?
Yeah, Murder Mountain.
Of course I have.
Tell the people, was this thing real?
What is it? Is it real? I don't know how.
Did you like the documentary?
It has its pros and cons, I guess I'll say. I did like the part that it definitely gave the impression that legalization is helping move some of those things forward and eliminate some of those dangers, is what they showed in that show. I think they made it seem like all of the Emerald Triangle, I think, and all of Humboldt County is like that. And Alder Point is a very small city within the Emerald Triangle and within Humboldt County. There are definitely more missing persons cases up there than some of the other parts of the country, just because of it's vast wilderness, no cell phone service, a lot of people living off the land, not connected, totally disconnected from society. Some of those missing people may be missing on purpose, and some of them are probably missing for, nefarious reasons. But
yeah, I think it sort of speaks to this idea. I mean, it's just to me, it's an exciting place to be. It's like at this moment in time in history of the United States, this is a location, an area where a lot is going on. Yeah, there's going to be some adventure. There's going to be some intrigue.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's definitely still, I said it somewhat, not lawlessness, but outlaw attitudes up there for sure. But I think legalization is definitely changing that and is, drawing more of a line of the people that are trying to go legit. And then, there's some people that have decided they don't want to try to go legit.
All right. So flash forward back.
Yep. Anyways.
Flash back to.
Yep. So yeah, I met Mike, our CEO, September 2014. He had done some consulting kind of for free in the industry, just kind of learn about the industry. Eventually, he made his way up to Humboldt with a broker that he met at the dispensary he was consulting at. It was the traditional ride up to Emerald Triangle, blindfolded, and take you to some farms. Don't know how to get there, so they don't show you how to get there. And then he came across these two farmers, Casey and Amber, who run Happy Day Farms up in Mendocino County. And these guys are an amazing couple. Much more than just organic. They're fully regenerative, off grid. They don't just grow cannabis; they grow fruits, vegetables, herbs. And they kind of view cannabis as, in a lot of ways, kind of like a small farm subsidy, in that, they like to grow fruits and vegetables and sell those at their local farmers market up there. And it's a really big community thing. But, you sell a pound of, apples or, celery for $5 and you sell a pound of weed for $1,000 plus. So they've kind of viewed cannabis as kind of like a small farm subsidy, is that help them support the rest of their operation, living off the grid and, sort of living this regenerative, organic lifestyle. And so he met them and was like, these are the people I want to help. This is what I want to do. I want to build a model around these people. And I met him probably a month or so after that. And he told me this idea. I want to build a model around these small farmers that, we really feel.
So sorry to back up.
Yep.
So it sounds like the genesis of the idea for Kana was really in the farmers. Is that right?
Definitely. Absolutely.
And so when you're with your friend, are you sitting around saying, how do we help these people? Is it, in my experience with startups, it's all about finding a problem to solve and helping people.
Yeah.
Right. Sales is actually the art of helping people.
Yeah.
So were you sitting there saying, wait a minute, how do we help these farmers survive and thrive?
Exactly. We feel like these farmers up at the Emerald Triangle, a lot of them have been doing it for, multiple decades, if not multiple generations. A lot of these families have grown up in these same properties. They, their families have been growing cannabis. Some of them have been, walking around in cannabis fields since they were 4 or 5 years old. And we really feel like these are the people that, built this industry in a lot of ways. We may not be sitting in this room. Kana would probably not exist if it weren't for these people that, persevered under much more difficult times than we are operating in cannabis now. They were constantly under threat of, the DEA helicopters coming down on their property, cutting down their plants, sending them off to jail. We've got one of our farmers who's definitely one of my favorite farmers, Johnny, from Huckleberry Hill Farm. He grew up, his parents grew cannabis. His mom was a huge advocate. He grew up, growing cannabis with his parents since he was 4 or 5 years old. And for some, technical reason, his property was like right up against BLM land or something. And he went to prison for 9 years when he was 20. For growing a plant that all it does is help people. And, there's a lot of people like him that persevered into much more difficult times. And, I don't think we would be in this industry and wouldn't be here today if it weren't for these people that persevered. And we just feel like, they deserve to operate in an industry in a model where they can continue to survive and thrive. As, more corporate money comes in here and more industrial type processes come in, I think there's definitely risks that, these smaller producers would have, be much more challenging for them to survive. So definitely been built around the small farmers.
So Chance Bending, this podcast is an entrepreneur podcast. It sounds like you identified a group of people you want to help. Then what? Like, how does it go from an idea into actually making reality happen?
Yep. So, we came around, we want to build a model around these small farmers. If you walked into a dispensary, I don't know if you guys had recommendations, 10 years ago, we're walking into dispensaries when it was the, medical Prop 215 world. Did either of you guys have recommendations going into dispensaries at all?
Recommendation?
Like, but pre 2018, when you had a, medical recommendation from a doctor and you went into dispensaries, it wasn't, recreationally, it was just adult medical. Or not adult, just medical.
So what's the question you asking?
I'm just curious, did you guys when was the first time you guys went into a dispensary in California? How about that? Let's keep it simple as that.
When it became recreational.
Okay, got it.
For me, I went in, I think once. I did get my medical, what's the word for it? Certification.
Medical recommendation.
Yeah, I got the medical recommendation, I think in 2016.
Okay.
Just to check it out.
Yep.
And it was like I opened up like a whole new world.
Right.
It was so confusing to me. And so I want to get into that.
Yeah. So, I think that was a little later, but before around the time when we launched 2015, it was used to most buyers and dispensaries and consumers. You walk into a dispensary, buyers, either cannabis is in the big jars on the shelves behind, and, dispensaries would weigh it out for you on a scale and put it in a plastic baggie and write the strain name on it. Or they would come in sort of the prepackaged dispensary branded Mylar packaging, all dispensary branded stuff, and just the strain name. And so back then, when you walked in a dispensary, you didn't know who grew that cannabis. You didn't know where it came from. You didn't know how it was grown. From a mysterious and transparency and health standpoint, that's not great. And two, the people that actually produced it were getting no credit at all. It was just the buyers at dispensaries were just putting their name on it and just passing it off as theirs.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that it happened that way in the industry? Do you feel like it was just a rush to put out product, and then we had a flight to quality? Or we're in the middle of a flight to quality?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think there's probably a number of reasons. Probably one is it's easier without having to, if people are going to still buy it and you don't have to tell much information about it, you can just put it in the cheapest, easiest, most packaging, and someone's still going to buy it. Why not continue to do that, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's probably a fairly big audience where if you just put a piece of tape on it and say marijuana, people are going to buy it.
Sure.
Or beer or whatever it may be. But then there's a new type of consumer where things are starting to get interesting.
Yep.
And so it seems like you anticipated this.
Anticipated is more like we wanted to just set up a model ecosystem where the farmers and producers were getting more credit. So We want it from the beginning. On all the packaging we had, we put the farmer name, which farm grew it, and also where it was grown. So giving people that more information, really giving a sense of who grew it and where it came from. But back then, because that's what buyers are used to, we wanted to, we came to them with, a prepackaged jar, branded jar of flower, and they said, "Why the fuck am I going to buy this? I buy my cannabis by the pound in turkey bags at, and mark it up 5x and see a much higher margin and put it in these big jars and wait out in front of people. I put it in my own plastic baggies." So, we got rejected by a bunch of dispensaries. So said, all right, well, fuck it. We're just going to go direct to consumer. So our other third co-founder, Diego, he's an engineer. So, you can't obviously put an app in the Apple App Store to sell weed, but we built a web app, looked like an app, and just started going direct to consumer in the Bay Area, just really making a name for sun-grown organic cannabis, which I didn't mention much earlier, but all the farmers that we work with only grow full sun, fully organic. We don't really work with any farmers that grow indoor or any, assisted light. We, some of our farmers do some sort of light dep and greenhouse, but no assisted light at all. But anyway, that was really how because we got, dispensaries didn't want to take prepackaged branded flower. We started just going direct to consumer, built this web app and launched that in the Bay Area and started making a name for, small farmer grown, sun grown organic cannabis. And also, as a byproduct, making a name for Kana. And then, about a year in, I think some other players in the industry really helped us along. I would say, one that comes to mind is Marley Natural as an example. I think you guys obviously know Bob Marley. You probably know they launched, or Privateer Holdings sort of licensed their name and launched their brand. Because of the strength of the Marley name, I think they went out and said, we want to put branded prepackaged flower on the shelf. And I think dispensaries were a bit more accepting of that. I was like, Bob Marley's arguably the biggest name associated with cannabis.
Wait, so Bob Marley has weed?
A company has licensed his name to put on to brand cannabis.
Are they doing well?
I'm not sure lately, to be honest. I don't hear as much about them. I guess what I will say is, they're one example I think actually helped us in a lot of ways when they got prepackaged branded flower on the shelf, and so they kind of opened up the door. I think there's some other people that helped us along the way, and so from that sense, I think they helped us along the way. So I'll say that at least. And so so about a year in, we started to see that that was going to actually open up. So then we basically brought on a head of sales who was running an edible company. And started building, the whole wholesale side of things and distribution.
So let's back up. Sorry, let's back up a little bit. How did you guys raise money originally? How did you get this thing going?
Yep.
Like, how did you snowball?
Yeah. So originally we raised like a friends and family round. I think it was $500,000 to just build the web app and fund some marketing.
And was it truly friends and family? Were you going around asking for
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mikey, our CEO, my co-founder, he started a company in South America before, food distribution company. He's from Venezuela, and has a fairly deep network of investors and family that were willing to support us.
Wow. So you have this idea, you get $500,000.
Yep.
And then you decide that you are going to create sort of what like artisanal, like, is that the right word?
Yeah. I think it's more like, craft, small batch
craft.
Cannabis. Yep.
Yeah. How does for our audience, and I think it goes to your question earlier, how should we evaluate the quality of cannabis? You mentioned like sun grown. Mm-hmm. Is that important? Like walk us through the sort of some of these ideas for the average person that might be getting into cannabis, or might be curious.
Sure. Yeah, I think everyone has their own preferences. I will preface it with that. These are my own personal opinions. Everyone has their own preferences. Some people love sun-grown. Some people love indoor. Some people love something somewhere in between there. For me personally, I think a lot of our farmers have sort of described these metaphors to me that I think really resonate with me. So one is like you walk into Whole Foods or let's just say Safeway, and you see the red delicious apples on one aisle that all look, pretty much the same, look perfect. They're shiny and red, all the perfect shape. And then you look at the organic aisle and, no apple is shaped the same. Some probably have some bruises, none of them are colored really the same. But when you actually bite into one of those, which one is going to taste better?
You tell me.
I would say the organic one, probably. So second, I think that's kind of, I guess in the other comparison, I think then you look at, that's kind of the similar thing. The red delicious one that's not perfect has been used a whole lot of, pesticides and other sort of chemicals to make it look perfect. But as a result, it doesn't taste as great, in my opinion. So I think that's kind of a similar comparison to sort of sun grown versus indoor. Indoor, because it's grown indoor with, artificially created climates, and it's indoor, it's not out in the sun in a natural environment, so there needs to be some more artificial inputs to make that plant grow, versus something that's growing out in the sun for a full 8 months. You just can't really replicate that indoors, in my opinion. Other sort of metaphor I think is really resonates is biggest plants in the world are redwood trees, right? Redwood trees, they just grow out in the world, out in the wild by themselves, simply because of everything else that's in the soil and everything else that sort of biodegrades in the soil, all the old other plants and grass and everything else. And that's what sort of makes healthy soil. And that alone, plus water, is what helps make redwoods grow to be the biggest plants in the world. That's all you need to grow cannabis.
So it sounds like if JD and I were to go into a store, we should ask for sun grown.
That's my personal preference, yes.
Are there other things we should ask for or that we should know about?
Personally for me, I would ask, who grew this? That'll give you a sense of, did it come from, a large corporate vertically integrated greenhouse in the Central Valley, or was it grown by, a small family farmer that, in my mind, built this industry?
Okay. What else?
You can also ask, if you look, what type of, sort of general effects you're looking for, what type of taste. Each terpene has a different type of taste. My personal favorite, I would say, are kind of the Jack strain, which has terpinolene, which is, I don't really even know how to describe what that flavor is like. There's nothing else that really smells like it.
I like that.
Or if you like, like fruity strains, you like really citrusy strains, you can ask for like, limonene, which is another terpene that really has that citrus smell and taste.
JD, this is an entire world.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, man.
So it sounds like you guys really focus on a high quality product from day one.
Yep, definitely.
And you started working with farmers. What is that like? Is it, with Kana, what do you take, walk us through how you take their product and turn it into a Kana product?
Sure. So, I don't know exactly what answer you're looking for in that, but I guess, we source with, at this point, over 100 farmers up in the Emerald Triangle spread out through Mendocino and Humboldt. We basically have a grading system in place that, basically takes into account potency, shape, size, smell, 4 to 5 different factors. And then we grade it on basically, AAA, AA, or single A. Kana Gold is basically the AAA, Kana Silver is the AA, and then single A goes into some other types of products. And then, basically goes into a jar and it's branded, it's sort of Kana is sort of the umbrella brand that sort of, helps support all the other sort of smaller farmer brands. And then, the farmer name is on there as well as the strain name, as well as all the potency information that's both you want to know and also required by the state as well.
That's so cool. So it sounds like Kana, what you're saying is it's the umbrella brand, and then the farmer's brand is still part of what you offer.
Yeah, I think it's a good relationship because, let's just say, a farm, one of the smaller farmers up in Mendocino, they may grow, let's just say, 150 pounds in a harvest, which could service, I don't know, let's just say maybe 10 dispensaries if they were to buy only their flower throughout the year. Maybe if they only buy their flower, maybe 2 or 3 dispensaries. So, in themselves, they don't have the scale to build a brand that can be, recognized on a large enough scale. But, Kana is a big enough brand with all the farmers together that we've become one of the more well-known brands in the state. And, that relationship and sort of getting to associate with a larger brand while still sort of getting to promote this, smaller brand, meaning the farmer's name is a good symbiotic relationship.
So, background on how I got introduced to Kana was obviously through our good friend Sasha.
Yep.
I always pick her brain about, the top brands in the industry and who's making waves. And for maybe 6 months now, she always would mention like Kana, those are my boys. We should go up there and visit them. Just that, like all the good stuff. So, I have a lot of friends who come in town and visit me. A lot of the Detroit community comes and visit me. So definitely. A lot of time they want to see what all the hype is about with the dispensaries out here. So I take them to a few spots. And one in particular is a dispensary called Bark, on San Vicente.
Yeah.
So we walked in there, and then I noticed like Kana. I'm like, oh shit, that's what Sasha is talking about. So I tell my boys, like, check that one out. Like my homegirl always is telling me about that. So I just wanted to let you know a few strains. I haven't tried any yet. I'm on a fast right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to complete a year.
I respect that. Oh wow.
I'm trying to complete a year sober. So
congrats. I like it.
Not for any like serious reason. I
like to show yourself you can do it.
Yeah, I like to challenge myself like that. But so my boys rave about it though. Like awesome. I'm not just saying that. So 2 strains in particular that I want you to know that the Detroit community loves: Kana Wedding Cake.
Yep.
And Kana Citrus Ballistic.
I haven't tried the Citrus Ballistic actually.
Yo.
I'll have to try it though.
They're going crazy about it. I'm just letting you know, man.
All right, I love it. We'll have to get some more down here then.
Whatever grower is growing that, just you got to let them know they're doing.
I'll let them know for sure.
Yeah.
So will it be one farmer who creates the Citrus Ballistic, or will it be a whole group of farmers?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of our farmers, a lot of them share genetics within sort of their network. So we definitely will have, could be 1 to 2, could be, there's not usually more than, 3 or 4 farmers that are growing the same strain. A lot of the time they've shared that genetic, with a few of their other farmer friends. And so we definitely have, multiple farmers that grow the same strain, but because our farmers grow from seed rather than clone, each plant is going to be a little bit different. So each, same strain going by 3 different farmers is going to turn out differently. And I think that's kind of what makes sort of the cannabis that Kana has special, and because of the relationship with the Emerald Triangle. And it's kind of these 3 factors. It's, the farmer, the specific sort of microclimates and terroir that, where the Emerald Triangle is, as well as sort of the genetics that these farmers have developed over the years that, sort of symbiotic relationships specifically with, with their farm and their location. So, if you were to take the same genetic from, let's just say Water Dog Herb Farm that lives up our hill from our centralized processing facility, and you were to grow that down in, even a sun-grown farm in Santa Barbara as an example, it's not going to turn out the same just because it wasn't grown in the same microclimate and the exact same terroir, very similar to how wine is.
So is that something that you guys actively market, this idea that it's small batch, and every time, like if JD's friends come back, it might be a different citrus than they had before?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to market because people also do love consistency also. So, I mean, it is a delicate balance, I would say. But, I think you kind of have to ask more about, if you really want to look into the science, you can look at what the cannabinoid content is and what the terpene content is. And sort of you can find similar strains that have that similar sort of cannabinoid and terpene sort of mix and makeup. So you can, even if it's not the same strain, if you're going to get, technical, you could definitely find something that's going to have a similar effect based on sort of those 2 factors.
Adam, so with your role as CMO of Kana, what is the biggest challenge with that? Because we talked about this on the last podcast with when Dr. Chen came through, and we were talking about the challenges in marketing a business like this. So what do you find that you have some hurdles that you may have to get over, and what do you see in the industry that's growing? And
that's a good question. It's interesting that you asked that. We actually just cyber brand marketing and business development as well, sort of a bifurcated role since we started. So it was about 4 years ago. And we actually just brought on a new CMO, so I can focus more exclusively on business development and some of the partnerships that we're working on from Stone Brewing, which is one of the bigger craft beer brands in the country. We felt like we got to a point where we were reaching somewhat of a national and global scale, and wanted to bring on with someone with much more expertise, which is great. I'm super excited about. Yeah, I mean, historically, definitely a lot of challenges. I mean, the amount of channels that you have to market the brand is much more limited than, an average brand. As an example, we really leveraged the Facebook ad network for a while. We have some really great video content and videographer that's really amazing and, can really capture sort of the essence of the farms. We built a lot of really great farmer content and telling the farmer stories. We use the Facebook ad platform for probably the first 2 years, got shut down 3 times, got it back up twice. The 3rd time, they said, you're gone. Tried to use the Twitter ad platform. That got shut down in under 30 seconds. Google AdWords got shut down in less than a month. So you definitely have to get pretty creative because a lot of the traditional channels that, a marketing team or marketing organization might use are not available. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge, but when you find out, different, methods and channels that are successful, you can kind of get an edge because no one else has really figured that out yet.
Right.
Was there a particular channel that worked well for you as you guys got started?
Yeah, I would really say the Facebook ad platform really was really useful. Really helped us tell the story of sort of what we were building, and through the eyes of these farmers and telling their stories. And because there wasn't a whole lot of other people figuring out how to advertise, cannabis on the Facebook ad platform, it was fairly cheap to get a lot of views. So it was a fairly efficient way to get the brand out there.
Were the ads on Facebook like totally out there, like straight bud, straight people smoking?
No, it's more I would say like landscape shots, like drone shots of farms, and then like interviews with the farmers and them telling their story about how they started.
Right.
It's not like, big zoomed in bud shots.
Who do you guys view as your primary customer now? Like, what does your customer look like?
That's a great question. I think it's a really big mix. We have consumers that are, I would say probably the average consumer is somewhere between, it's like, 27 and like 50. So it's pretty broad. I think it's more about the values that sort of demographic and that consumer has. If they care about the products that they're buying and where they come from, and who they're supporting by where they're putting their money, I think it's more about sort of a common value system rather than this person is this age and looks like this.
And where are you finding these people today? Like, describe some of your marketing efforts, in broad terms today.
Sure. I mean, we do a lot of experiential marketing. We do a lot of events, sponsor a lot of events. We've been trying to get a lot more involved in non-cannabis events. Like we just sponsored a huge sort of organic food festival up in Sacramento called the Farm to Fork Festival. It's like a 200,000 person event. We are the first cannabis brand they've ever had there. So I think we're really trying to sort of focus on some of the non-cannabis avenues where, rather than that there's nothing wrong with it, but let's just say like the High Times event where it's a bunch of cannabis brands and a bunch of cannabis consumers, they already know about cannabis. They already know what they're looking for. But if we can get, sort of the brand out there in environments where cannabis has not traditionally, had a place, then we can get in front of some of these newer consumers that are starting to get curious about cannabis.
When you say business development, I know, without revealing too much, like what could that mean in the
well, I actually can tell you the rest of the story about the brand. That'll kind of give you a sense of what that means. Yeah, so after we had just started to ran the delivery service for about a year, and then we started branching into wholesale. And we started working with 5 to 15 farmers. At this point, we work with over 100, and we started to get to the point where we really needed to look at some of these other models around the world that are really sort of working with independent producers at scale. And so we actually took a trip down to Colombia. One of our investors and now one of our employees that sort of runs some of our upstream ops, his family owned a fresh cut flower farm, fresh cut flower company in Colombia and Ecuador. That's one model. I think the one that resonates and can connect with people a bit more is kind of like how the South American coffee model works, where most of the coffee that a lot of people buy around the world is grown by, smaller. I mean, average small coffee farm is much bigger than an average small cannabis farm, but they're still independent family farms. But they send their beans to a centralized facility where they're dried, roasted, cured, and packaged and distributed at scale, which are basically roasting houses. Very similar model to what we're doing here. Now we work with 100 plus farmers or so, and we really needed to look at how we could bring some economies of scale and sort of industrial processes to the system to help really show this model that this could be a scalable model. So similar thing, we acquired an old winery up in southern Mendocino County, Redwood Valley. It's a little bit north of Ukiah. It's the old Fetzer winery. I don't know if you guys know Fetzer very well. They sold to Brown Forman like in the early 2000s, but Brown Forman basically left the real estate asset to the family. It was basically unused and essentially abandoned for like 10, 15 years or so. And we have a bunch of farmers that live up the road past the property. And right when we took this trip to Colombia with some of our farmers, and we realized we need to find a centralized processing facility similar to what coffee does. And some of our farmers said, there's just the old Fetzer wineries right past that every day, and it's been abandoned for 10 years. You guys should reach out to the family. And it ended up purchasing that property. We actually closed on it the day Prop 64 passed.
No kidding.
And yeah, similar thing. So basically you're doing centralized processing there. It's basically acquired 3 parcels over the past 2 or 3 years. So it's now about 300 acres, about 200,000 square feet of industrial space. So we're probably the largest processor of, flower in the state, I think at this point, one of the largest ones. And then in the next, Q2, Q3, turning on extraction. And then by the end of the year, we'll have, other value add products, edibles, topicals, and tinctures. So, basically answer your question, we're continuing to build the Flow Kana brand, which kind of supports everything, but are really starting to, partner and power other brands and white label and co-pack for other brands, and sort of are doing kind of co-branding powered by Kana concept, similar to, Intel Inside, kind of, if you know that it's powered by Kana, you're using oil that was, inputs used from, small independent sun-grown organic farmers. It can kind of, add value to that brand as well, because our goal is really to move as much volume for these small farmers as we can. That's how we help them survive. And we know that, there's millions and millions of pounds up in the Emerald Triangle, and it's unrealistic for us to assume that we can just move that through the Kana brand. So in terms of business development, it's, really working with some of these other brands and sort of, vetting and some due diligence. And
was that always part of the vision?
Not really. I mean, it continued to evolve over time. We started as a delivery service because we had to, and then it evolved into, wholesale distribution. And then when we got to a certain scale and working with, 50 plus farmers, they're like, we really need to bring some, economies of scale and sort of, centralized processing and aggregation to this. And then started moving to that direction. And now have, become to the point where we're one of the largest aggregators and processors in the state. So we really have the, ability to power a lot of the brands in the state via, sun-grown organic cannabis. And I think that's a way for us to really, push the sun-grown organic movement through, sort of horizontal integration with all the, if all the brands on the shelf are using, inputs and oil from, small organic farmers, then we win.
I get a Whole Foods vibe. Like, if you're using Kana, it's like pure, like organic,
Exactly.
All right.
Wow. So you go from a little idea, a little seed, about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
You raise a little friend and family.
Yep.
You start working with these family farmers.
Yep.
Up north. Things start to grow. You realize to keep expanding, you have to actually change the idea of what Kana is.
Yep.
And here we are today. Like, how are you guys looking at 2019 and 20? What's next? Like, what does it look like out there for the cannabis industry right now?
It's a good question. So I think it's going to be kind of a make or break year, to be honest, for better or for worse. Historically, we just closed our Series B. Before that, we raised about $50 million in total. We just closed the Series B, which is probably, we'll have a press release coming out next week, but it's going to was probably one of, if not one of the largest private rounds in the industry so far. We felt like we really needed to raise and lock down a large, war chest, essentially, because we really feel like, some of these bigger Canadian players with billions of dollars are inevitably going to start infiltrating California. They already are. And I think it's going to be, for better or for worse, it's going to be somewhat of a year of consolidation in a lot of ways. And it's going to kind of be a, make or break year for a lot of people. So I think you're going to see, unfortunately, I think you're going to kind of see consolidation, and a lot of these, operators are going to struggle to survive, over the next 6 to 9 months, which is really, really hard to see and tough to say. But, we for us personally, we felt like we needed to raise a large amount of cash so we could continue to survive and compete with that. And through that, continue to support these small farmers.
Wow. So is it possible, if I'm hearing you correctly, Canadian cannabis there is a threat that might take over the United States? I don't
know if it's as much of a scary as a threat, but I think, we need to be wary if we want the California cannabis industry to continue to be controlled and centralized around California values and California operators.
And so it's a make or break year, because it sounds like there are a bunch of smaller operators, but that consolidation is just inevitable.
I think if you're a California operator and you don't partner up with someone in the next 6 to 12 months that has raised a few $100 million, it's going to be hard to survive, because these guys in Canada have billions and billions of dollars, and it's only a matter of time before they start coming into California.
Question for you, Adam. Inevitably, when businesses grow to scale, like you're saying, and get really big, a lot of times, product can suffer, like quality-wise. But I think I know the answer that you're going to say. I just want to hear it from your perspective. How do you guys compete with the industrialization of what's going on with marijuana, and like people are going to be producing it on a mass scale?
Yep.
But keeping what you guys are doing with the craft movement, but it doesn't suffer the quality, so you can keep, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a two-part answer. I mean, one, I think we've built a pretty robust technology team. I think, we're, compared to other operators in California, we have a technology team of, 15 plus right now. That's going to grow to 25 plus in 2019, which I don't think there's many other cannabis operators that are more of, probably 5 or so, engineers on their team. We've got, product managers, engineers, and UX people, because we have a much more, complex and spread out model. If you're a vertically integrated operator, let's just say, Central Valley is an example. You've got a 200,000 square foot greenhouse, right next to your 50,000 square foot manufacturing or processing facility, right next to your 10,000 square foot distro hub. versus us, we've got, 100 plus farmers spread out over an area the size of Ireland, but we still need to have that same level of transparency and sort of, visibility up and down the supply chain. So we've had to build a lot of technology to basically give us that visibility up and down the supply chain. How much biomass is on each farm, how much is available, how much do we have of their inventory down in each one of our distro hubs and our distribution facilities. Where is it? Is it getting processed into jars these days, or is it going into, pre-rolls this day? So we just have had to build a lot of technology to have a lot more visibility up and down the supply chain because it's a lot more complex. But to answer your other question, I think the great thing about sun-grown organic cannabis, it can be very high quality, but also very, cost effective to produce, because all you're essentially using, if you're doing it right, is, great soil that you've developed on your own farm, over the years, water and sun, and that's it.
That's true.
So if you do it the right way, you can grow very high quality cannabis at a very cost effective manner.
That's true. I have a question about like the deals with the growers, because tell me if I'm off base. Tell me if I'm too out there on this. It's somewhat like a record label to me. Like, you basically go and find talent and sign them to you. You know what I'm saying?
I never thought about it like that.
You know what I mean? So like, how do those deals work? Like, if I'm a grower and I think I'm big time, you might not think that. Like, but if you do identify like the next Drake of growers.
The next
like,
Drake.
Is it like a?
It's interesting to say. So we one of the brands that we power is California's Willie Nelson's brand, which Willie's Reserve, which is like an example of sort of the business development deals that we do. Is we basically they've licensed Willie Nelson's brand, and they operate in Washington, Colorado, and Oregon, and they wanted a partner in California. They didn't want to get a license, so we basically source, white label, co-pack, and distribute for them, and they basically take a royalty. But for Willie Nelson, he's kind of a unique guy. We have a network of over 100 farmers. So, his team came out to California. They visited a bunch of farmers in Emerald Triangle, tasted a bunch of their flower, and kind of got a sense of which of our farmers feel like they sort of connect with, Willie Nelson specific sort of vibe and values. So, within sort of the larger farmer ecosystem, they kind of found farmers that kind of connect with Willie's values. And let's just say we power, I don't know who's like a opposite of Willie Nelson. Say we powered Wiz Khalifa's cannabis brand, he'd probably connect with some different farmers in our network than when Willie would. But so yeah, in that way, it is pretty similar.
Do they sign to you? Like, is it contracts that they have to have with you? Like, they can only distribute to you?
That's a really interesting question too. I mean, historically, contracts, any sort of contracts have not been a thing in cannabis because it's all been, handshake deals basically. But yeah, we basically have sort of a core group of farmers that we continue to roll into contracts, but we basically have a contract to basically have, essentially first right of refusal to buy all their product.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you.
What are the popular Flowcana products out there? If our audience is listening, they want to try something new. Is there something you can recommend for someone who might be interested in getting into the brand?
Sure. I mean, some of my favorite strains. Definitely a fan of Pineapple Wonder and some of the general pineapple strains. I definitely love. There's one farmer, Essentia. I definitely like his strains, Magic Wand and Lime Juice, are definitely two of my favorite strains. Water Dog Herb Farm, they grow Phoenix, which is a great stain for sort of I'll say intimacy and connecting with other people.
Valentine's Day.
Exactly, it's a Valentine's Day strain. There you go.
So, but it sounds like our audience should go in and ask for Flowcana by name. For sure. Hey, do you sell Flowcana here?
Yeah, definitely.
That's the way to go about it.
Yep. I think most dispensaries in California should say, yeah, we've got it, hopefully.
And so if you do use Flowcana, then you're really promoting California farmers.
Yep.
In this battle against, I only joke about Canadians because my wife is Canadian. So battle against Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal thing. Cannabis. Like, I have no problem with the Canadian companies. I mean, they're doing a lot of really cool things. They're developing a lot of amazing genetics up in Canada. I think they're doing a lot of really cool stuff. Personally, we feel like we want to continue to build a model that's centered around sort of California values and the California brands and, the California farmers that we really feel like have built this industry. So kind of a personal preference. No, nothing against Canadian.
So what's next for you guys over the next year or two? What are we going to see you guys getting into? What's the future? What's the future hold?
Sure. Yeah. So the rest of this year, we've really honed sort of flower processing at a large scale. Next is turning on, oil extraction manufacturing in Q2, Q3 or so, and getting that set up to be, one of the larger processors in the state. And then towards the end of the year, we'll be turning on, manufacturing of other value add products like edibles and topicals and tinctures, so we can help, really help some of these smaller brands in the state, scale and sort of white label empower some of these other brands.
If people are out there, they're cannabis entrepreneurs, where should they get in touch or look up the company to learn more?
Find us on Instagram. Our definitely our social media team will definitely answer your DMs. They're on there pretty much all day answering people's DMs. So you can definitely shoot us. It's at flow_Kana, or you can shoot us a message at info@flowkana.com.
I think this is so interesting because I feel like you guys took advantage of a major opportunity and you had to do it fast based on what I see.
Yeah.
And then you went big and you weren't scared to go big. I really have to give my hat off to you for building something pretty spectacular. And it just seems like there's competition everywhere, but it doesn't seem to be intimidating you at all. So.
No, not at all. We just got to move fast.
Dope, man. Dope.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time, guys. This
Adam,
was awesome.
thank you for stopping by. Everybody, please check out Kana. Yeah. We're gonna check out Kana, and a lot more to come here at Chance Bending. So we'll be talking to all of you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.